Hey everyone, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I'm Spencer.
And I'm Katie. And today we're going to be talking about homelessness. What's the issue? What can we do about it? So we're going to start with a video here. Let me share my screen. This is going to be how the U.S. made affordable homes illegal by Vox.
So I spend a lot of time looking at houses on Zillow. And lately I noticed that even in places where houses are usually expensive, they seem even more expensive. Like here in the San Francisco Bay Area. What has the last year been like?
It's shocking. Buyers are paying 15 to 20% above asking price now. I had a listing in South San Francisco, 32 offers, 31 very unhappy buyers.
For years, the Bay Area has been an extreme example of how difficult it is to find affordable housing in the US. It's where Silicon Valley bus drivers sleep in their cars at night because they can't afford housing near work, and where school teachers can't afford to live in the counties they teach. But it's not just the Bay Area. The lack of affordable housing is a national problem, and right now it's worse than ever. We've seen over the last year housing prices reach a level they've never reached before in American history. They kind of just look like a rocket ship, going to the moon. Housing prices reaching a median of $350,000 for.
Oh my gosh. Like, literally went from what? This is about 280 up to 350.
What is that?
In 2 years. So this is the median U.S. home price. Like the average, pretty much.
Or yeah, better than the average though. But
yeah,
more accurate.
It's probably
than
higher
the
than the average.
Yeah.
Or is it?
It depends. It depends on the numbers.
Yeah.
Because that's why average is hard. Like, that's why when people try to say the average salary, it's not really accurate because of people who make super little and then people who make a lot. So that's why median is so much more important when looking at these statistics, because it gives you a more accurate representation. Because half of the people. So I guess in a sense.
The median is the one where you add them up and then divide it, right?
No, that one's average. Median is like the dead middle. So there's 50%.
Oh, median is like the dead middle price of all
of them. So 50%
of
houses are above that price and 50% of houses are below that price.
Okay. I'm thinking of the mean.
In theory.
I think it's thinking the mean.
I don't remember mean.
I think the mean is the one where you add it up and then divide it.
It could. I'm not sure. I'm not. No comment.
But yeah, this is the middle though. Like the absolute middle price.
Yes.
Which I don't think it would be higher, honestly, but that's still that's a big increase for 2 years now.
Yeah, and I think you have to, since that is US, like there's still obviously, I'd say the Midwest, at least some states and like some smaller cities probably have somewhat affordable houses, but you also have to take into account if you're telling people to move there, how are they supposed to get to work? Most of these small towns that have actual affordable housing, you have to drive like an hour or two plus just to get to your job. That costs money too. So that's not just as simple as, people can just move to the.
Yeah, and you also need to like renovate houses sometimes too. Like,
yes.
As like you legally have to in some cases even, I think. Like there's just
if it's unsafe,
you have to keep up with the city.
Yeah.
In your house.
And the fact that it has climbed that much in 2 years is very concerning.
It's alarming, yeah.
For the median American home. Those prices have made rents more expensive and have made homeownership less attainable for millions of Americans.
True.
So why is this happening? And how do we bring that rocket ship closer to Earth? We can think of today's housing prices in terms of a supply and demand problem. On the demand side, there are a few things happening. The first is a generational shift in who's buying homes. Millennials are the biggest generation in American history, and they're aging into their prime home buying years. On top of that, mortgage rates are at an all-time low, which means it's very cheap to borrow the money needed to buy a house. That's enticed more people to buy if they can, making demand for houses even higher.
If they can, though, that's the key. Like, if, you've ever had issues in the past, like, let's say, like, I don't know if they look at evictions when you go to, like, get a mortgage when you're trying to buy a house. You also have to be able to afford the down payment, even though a lot of times the mortgage itself can be cheaper than rent.
And your credit score too.
But your
That's a
credit
big
score
one.
has to be good. So if you have any kind of debt, including medical debt, you know, sorry, you can't
And
buy a house.
and mortgage rates, I think, are going back up now, actually, since I don't know when this video was posted, but with the feds raising,
Yeah.
I think interest rates, I think that I guess I'm not gonna state for sure, but I would assume it affects all sorts of loan rates.
Okay.
So I think we also are now gonna, like, we missed that sweet spot because nobody could afford it. Like the people
Right.
who were like, it's their churn in a sense. Not that it really
Mhm.
becomes anyone's churn, but now that millennials should be able to buy a house when mortgage was low, rates were low, we couldn't because of those like some of those factors that you mentioned, and there's other factors too.
Yeah.
But
And also like
so
student debt.
yeah, exactly.
That's another one.
Just just because mortgage rates are low doesn't mean that it's easily accessible either. And they're not
And
claiming
I,
that,
I
but
don't think they're implying that, but I
no,
think it's
no,
clarify that.
yeah.
Okay.
The problem is that supply isn't matching that demand. From 2010 to 2019, there were fewer homes built in the US than in any decade since the 1960s. In particular, the construction of smaller entry-level housing, the kind made for first-time homebuyers, has dropped dramatically. In the 1980s, those starter homes made up around 40% of all homes built. Today, it's closer to 7%. In 2018, one estimate said the US housing market was 2.5 million homes short of meeting demand. By the end of 2020, it was 3.8 million.
That's driving a big part of the problem, both for renters and for people who want to be homeowners.
The shortage is worst in the places where demand is highest, near good jobs, transit, and schools. And one pretty straightforward solution to that is to just build more homes in those places. But for years, there's been one big obstacle to that. We aren't allowed to.
Oh.
Take a look at this map of the Bay Area. It's showing something called zoning, or local regulations that decide what can be built where. This much of the region is zoned for residential housing. In blue are areas zoned to allow multifamily housing, while the areas shaded in pink are zoned for single-family housing only. That's 82% of all residential land in the Bay Area.
Wow.
What it means is that you've banned the ability for anyone to build anything other than a single unit of housing on that lot of land.
And in many towns, like Atherton, they've excluded all multifamily housing from their neighborhoods.
And that doesn't just mean a giant apartment building. It means things like duplexes, things like fourplexes, things like that are illegal in the majority of the country.
This is an example of something called exclusionary zoning. It's a big part of the reason for the housing supply shortage in the US.
I feel like that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, like what's their rationale behind that? I wonder. Like
I'm sure it has to do something with like, you know, like certain types of people, like mainly poor people who have to live in, like, you know, duplexes or apartments. Like they don't, like it's really a way to prevent poor people from getting better housing and better neighborhoods.
yeah, that makes sense. And I also think, I know multi-home families they're technically separate homes, but sometimes I feel like maybe multi-generational families might live in those types of homes. And then
Yeah.
we also know that I guess I'm not sure, but I think multi-generational, like people who live with multi-generational families are not usually white.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm not claiming that's part of the rationale, and they would probably never claim that because if people do bad things for bad reasons, they're never gonna
Right. They're
admit
not
it.
going to
But
openly say that kind of
yeah,
thing. But yeah, I mean, that is true too. Yeah. Like people of color tend to live in like this type of housing. So, you know, it's questionable at the very least.
especially if there's a whole county that
Yeah.
made it so that they couldn't have those types of homes there. That's a little sketch. I wonder what
Yeah.
I don't have any statistics, so I don't know, but I do wonder what what was I gonna say? What did I want? How do you say that? What word is that? What word am I thinking of?
What? I
What
don't know.
the proportion of blank is that neighborhood is made up of? Like demographic, that's the word.
Oh,
I wonder
demographic.
what demographic that neighborhood is, or how like the
Yeah.
proportion
Right.
looks.
Yeah. Like what their like, yeah, racial demographic is and what their income
Yeah.
demographic is and everything.
Yes.
Definitely for sure.
And single-family only zoning is just one way local laws limit how much housing we can build. Many places also employ height restrictions. In Cupertino, California, some areas are zoned for multifamily buildings. but they don't allow any buildings over 2 stories. Parking requirements are often written into zoning laws too. Cupertino requires developers to set aside space for 2 parking spaces for each unit of multifamily housing. That means if you were building an apartment complex that had 100 units, you need to find space for 200 parking spots, which usually means buildings that size don't get built at all.
They lower the number of units they're actually building so they can save space for those parking spaces. And then those units become more expensive because the land still stays the same cost to the developer. And you then get a situation where potentially more affordable units turn into higher income servicing units.
Another feature of many zoning laws is minimum lot sizes. It means builders are legally required to allot a minimum amount of land for each home, often a large amount of land. In Cupertino, most single-family lots must be at least 5,000 square feet each.
Starter homes are usually around 1,400 to 1,500 square feet. And so you basically banned all that type of housing.
In Atherton, the minimum lot size for homes is 1 acre, more than 43,000 square feet, which makes it virtually impossible to build any kind of affordable home there. Together, exclusionary zoning laws like this push builders across the country to focus on bigger luxury homes instead of smaller starter homes or multifamily housing,
essentially creating gated communities in public spaces. What you are saying is that you are only allowing people who have already been able to partake in the wealth of this country and to grow their income and have access to high opportunity jobs and education to live in our neighborhoods.
I mean, that's true. And like, I have noticed that where I live personally, like there's a lot of the newer apartment buildings are luxury apartments. Like they don't really build a lot of affordable housing anymore. Like
where you are
affordable
right
housing
now.
is old housing.
Where you are right now.
Where I am right now is
that what
yeah. Like because I'm
okay.
in a duplex right now, but
you're talking. I didn't know if you meant like when you lived in California.
I just meant like when I would when I was delivering for like DoorDash, let's say.
Yeah.
Like I go to people's apartments. Like most of the newer apartments are like very luxury and high end.
Oh, okay. Yeah, where you are now. Not for some
Not
reason I thought
am.
you meant when you lived in California you noticed this.
Oh, in California too. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay.
So I also noticed it there too.
Okay.
But I also lived in an expensive part of California, so
yeah.
But yeah, let's see. Would you like this condition next to your home? Each 8 cottages of 1 lot, 60 feet lot. Okay.
Historically, some of the first zoning laws in the U.S. were engineered for that exactly, to block people of color, and in particular Black Americans, from living in predominantly white neighborhoods. Yep. Today, the laws don't explicitly mention race, but they continue to worsen segregation. In the Bay Area, the more single-family zoning in a neighborhood, the whiter it is.
I guess we were right.
Yeah, we were right. Looks like this is in the Bay Area specifically. Oh, it was going up. Oh, it's going down, and then something happened here, and it spiked up.
Yeah, they don't have the years though, do they? Just percentages.
Right. The area population percentage, and then single family share of residential zoning.
That's a weird way to put a graph, though, I feel like, because there's no time.
It is kind of a weird, but I get what they're saying.
Yeah.
So this is what you were talking about before, like the racial demographics of the Bay Area. And so by percentage of single family zoning versus like duplexes and townhouses and stuff. So it is mostly white people who were in single family share of residential zoning.
Yeah. That does make sense.
You see what they're saying there? Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that I was trying to look at it from like a timeline perspective, but
I was at first too. It was kind of confusing, but
yeah. And I mean, it probably there probably is a time aspect to it still, but we can't make a time assumption without knowing that information. But either way, it has or did. Yeah. And it's not even, or maybe there isn't a time perspective. Maybe we're not supposed to look at it that way. It's more as the population, as single family zoning goes up, that population is more white, regardless of time. Time isn't a factor in this aspect, I guess, actually.
Right. Yeah, I think this is one point in time.
Yeah. Because, it's like the graphs where, I don't know off the top of my head, but as X factor goes up, Y factor increases. So it doesn't matter about time. But yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
But all this has another effect as well. By shrinking the pot of new housing getting built, while demand keeps rising, it drives up the cost of housing for everyone. Changing zoning laws can be difficult, and often the biggest obstacles are the wealthiest residents.
The process is usually defined by who shows up to these public meetings. And what you have is often a much whiter, wealthier crowd, the ones who come and say, I don't want this in my community, I'm concerned about what will happen to my property values. And then there's this kind of code word, neighborhood character.
Remember those teachers I mentioned who can't afford to live in?
Yeah, that's how they say it, I guess.
They still talk like that to this day.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. That it
It's
does,
just,
but it doesn't. But the fact that people still act like that
right.
to this day blows my mind. Like, I know it shouldn't, but it does. Like,
Right. It's just crazy that it's even still like this.
yeah,
It should not be.
because none of it like matters. Like it matters, but it shouldn't matter.
Right.
It's just something, I guess.
Yeah.
Remember those teachers I mentioned who can't afford to live in the counties where they teach? Well, in 2018, one local school district proposed a solution, building affordable housing units for teachers in San Jose. It caused an uproar among San Jose parents who petitioned against changing the neighborhood. It may not.
See, why would you not? Okay.
Wouldn't they want
If
their
you're
teachers?
trusting these teachers to teach your children, like, what's wrong with them living in your neighborhood?
Right?
I don't get that at all. It makes zero sense to me.
Yeah.
But it's just elitism and, things like that. Just people thinking they're better than other people.
And then they expect these teachers to drive from however far away to
or
teach
take the
their
bus.
kids. Or take the bus. But either way, they have to travel
Right.
to come teach your kid. Like, that is, the entitlement there. I cannot. That is a joke.
And specifically because you don't want them in your neighborhood, as they've explicitly said.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know how they still teach, honestly. I wouldn't even want to teach.
Nope.
If I was a teacher and that happened to me, like,
apparently those
teaching.
parents think that they can teach themselves if they don't want those.
Yeah, they can teach their own kids.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't want those teachers in their neighborhood, then fine, teach those kids yourself.
Yeah, for real.
Seem like a big deal when one wealthy neighborhood blocks one multifamily development. The problem is that it happens all the time. Communities block new housing everywhere.
People are, when they hear this kind of rhetoric, very confused because they're like, why I don't want to live in a place with 10,000 apartment buildings. It doesn't even make sense to do that. And they're right. No one is saying that there should be every neighborhood in every city should be, 10,000 foot apartment buildings or anything like that.
But even small, gradual changes to zoning laws can have an impact. For example, allowing smaller homes on smaller lots, or simply allowing duplexes would double capacity for housing in some areas.
Yeah.
In recent years, some cities like Berkeley, Minneapolis, and Portland have taken the huge step of ending single-family zoning. But the problem is nationwide.
The real fix is going to happen when these decisions start being made and start being regulated at the statewide level or at the federal level in some capacity.
Today, the Biden administration is attempting to tackle exclusionary zoning through a $5 billion program that would give money to localities that remove exclusionary zoning policies. But even that may not be enough.
This is more than any presidential administration has done on this topic, either Democrat or Republican. It is also very small in the face of this problem. They want to take action, they recognize how big of a deal it is, but they are not actually willing to create kind of political blowback from often very high value voters living in suburban environments.
Ending America's housing shortage will require real political willpower, and it'll require people across the country to take a look at their own neighborhoods, what gets built, who gets excluded, and how to make homeownership achievable for the millions who are shut out.
Yeah, so this is basically happening because a bunch of, suburban people don't want, urban people living in their areas.
Oh.
Like, it's just, the entitlement is so real. And, like, they're basically the politicians who endorse this are saying that, these people's uncomfortableness is more important than actually being able to house people who need it the most.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, I guess the only thing I would agree with that. Like, by allowing this, that is their statement, their stance, that is their moral stance. But I think a lot of times the reason they're not doing this is because they will lose those voters. But again, that
Yeah,
is wrong too. But the only problem that I would have with that is that we know who would take those voters and then take control of, and that
right.
party would be 10 times worse. But
Yeah,
this party needs to do something about it and not bend over backwards for some suburban hicks who don't even matter.
right.
Like, they're
Real.
terrible people. Why do you even care what they think?
Right.
Granted,
And it's like, oh, grow up. Like, seriously, people are going to live in your neighborhood. People have the right to live
yes.
where they want to live if they can afford it,
I mean,
or
I
like
would.
build housing where they want to build more affordable housing. But no, because it'll bring my property values down.
Oh my
Well,
God, that's a joke.
that's the risk of getting a house. So you're going to have to suck it up if
And
you
it
really think,
won't.
right,
Why would it? Because you think it's undesirable. So it's just in your mind
right,
when you're selling a house because people think it's undesirable when it's not. So you see the problem here. The problem isn't that it truly brings your property value down. The problem is that we let it bring the property value down. It does
right. Like if
not.
people just didn't care, like it wouldn't bring the property value down.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I've got some statistics here. These are from the Lotus campaign homelessness stats. Let's see here. We'll just look at the numbers. I think this is the easiest. Total number
Okay.
of people experience homelessness in the United States, 580,446. And this is just the people that have been counted, I believe. I don't think this represents everybody. I think this is just who they've counted.
Okay.
So, sheltered homeless people, 354,386. Unsheltered, 226,080. So, homeless men is 352,211. Homeless women is 223,578. So it looks like there's more homeless men than women, but the numbers are, yeah, there's a big chunk more men than women actually. But families with children, 171,670. Unaccompanied youth, 34,210. And we've got veterans, 37,252. And the chronically homeless is 120,323. So, men still represent the majority of those who experience homelessness, with 60% of the population identifying as male. A far more diverse cross section of the general population is affected. So, women are 39% of those experiencing homelessness. The increasing rate of homelessness among women is exacerbated by high rates of domestic, physical, and sexual abuse. Families. Not since the Great Depression have so many families been homeless in the US. In the 80s, families accounted for less than 1% of those experiencing homelessness. Today, families account for almost 30%. Unaccompanied youth. 6% of people experiencing homelessness are unaccompanied youth under the age of 25. Half of this demographic is living in unsheltered environments. So I think unaccompanied youth, those are just kids who get kicked out of their houses, usually for like being gay or trans or something like that. Or like, you know, there's just doing something to get them kicked out that
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
shouldn't get them kicked out.
And that's 25 and under, right? Is what they consider
Right.
youth.
Yeah. And then veterans. So it says there have been major strides over the past decade. 8% of all adults are homeless veterans. Or 8% of all homeless adults are veterans. And then women are the fastest growing segment of the homeless veteran population and now comprise 9% of the total. Chronically homeless, That's about 20% experiencing homelessness have chronic patterns of homelessness, meaning they've been homeless for more than a year or have had multiple periods of homelessness over the preceding 3 years. The great majority of those who are chronically homeless, almost 64%, are unsheltered. All right, the cause of homelessness. We're going to look at this. There's a common misconception that alcohol and drug abuse are the root causes of homelessness. However, this is rarely the case. In most situations, multiple factors are at play. Simple economic issues are among the most critical factors contributing to homelessness. These include the lack of affordable housing, poverty, lack of employment opportunities, and low wages. Far too many people are living so close to the edge of economic disaster that one financial setback, such as job loss, car troubles, illness, divorce, abandonment, or any unexpected expense, can lead to the loss of their home. Non-economic factors can also play a role in homelessness. These include psychological or physical disabilities, learning disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, medical conditions, drug and alcohol dependence, a history of child abuse, sexual abuse, or some combination of these. Domestic abuse, for example, is the leading cause of homelessness among women, and a shocking 84% of homeless women have experienced severe physical or sexual abuse at some point in their lives. This is just the homeless population by state. So purple is the lower amount, less than 20,000, and orange is more than 180,000.
And I think an important factor just to consider when, I guess I don't know if you're going to go over this, but with California is because of weather. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
I guess I don't know if they technically have better social, I mean, they probably have better social policies in some states, but I
Yeah.
don't know if they do than every state. I don't know all their social policies comparatively, but either way, the weather itself is a huge, especially if they're from the
Yeah.
Midwest, you can't really survive homelessness in the
Right.
Midwest.
And a lot of people actually will migrate if they're homeless to somewhere with better weather
Yeah,
and better policy and better social policies for homeless people, because they want to live somewhere where they're going to be treated better and they're going to have a
yes.
better chance of survival.
Which is also, I think, why probably some states are shitty and make policies terrible against homeless people because they know that they will leave the state then, which is
Yeah.
awful. I can't imagine somebody wanting someone to leave a state because they're homeless. Like, that is
Right.
so heartbreaking that people would care so little about these people that are homeless that they would rather pretty much slap them with a felony or
Right.
force them to leave the state. That is
Oh, yeah. We're going to go over some different laws.
okay.
But yeah, so these are the 10 states with the most homeless people. We've got California, New York, Florida, Texas, Washington, Massachusetts, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Ohio. So I don't know, if you take a look at this list, you'll notice that it's not just left-leaning states like a lot of people like to imply. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people think that, the liberal ideology is what's causing the homeless problem or whatever. It's like, no, this is a problem across the board. It's more of a population issue than anything else. Like, it doesn't have to do with whether your state is red or blue.
Yeah.
And then I've got the 10 worst cities for homelessness in the US. So Springfield, Massachusetts is number 10. Then Eugene, Oregon is number 9. Honolulu is number 8. Chicago, Illinois is number 7. And Seattle, Washington is number 6. San Jose, California is number 5. San Francisco is number 4. San Diego is number 3. New York City is number 2. And LA, of course, is number 1. And now we have a couple more videos. But first, I really just wanted to cover what the solution is before we go over this video.
Okay.
So I just wanted to address the real solution to this is housing the homeless. The cost for housing one homeless person is $13,000 to $25,000 per person per year, according to Mill City Times. For a comparison, chronic homelessness costs between $30,000 and $50,000 per person per year, according to homelessness law. And this is largely due to the criminalization of homelessness. So that, yeah, housing the homeless, it's cheaper and it's more effective than criminalizing homelessness. Just so we have those numbers.
And it's just the ethical thing to do, too.
Oh, I mean, that definitely, too.
The moral thing to do if people want to bring morality into it.
Yeah. But even if people are just worried about the city budget and they don't care about the morality, it's still better to do that anyways.
Yes.
That's just a bonus of doing the right thing. It's also saving money.
Hold up money.
All right. Are you ready to watch this video?
Yes.
Let's do it.
What do we do about the homeless? This is one of the most vexing public policy problems we face. If you live in a big city, especially on the West Coast, you literally face it every day. And every day it seems to get worse. Why? Let's start with a couple facts. First, the word itself is misleading. Homelessness is not primarily a housing problem, it's a human problem.
What? I mean, no, it's a housing problem because people don't have housing, that's why they're homeless.
It's literally in the name.
Right.
It literally is the name.
Yes.
Like, what?
Homeless means without a home. So it is a housing problem. But let's see, how is it a human problem? Let's see if they explain.
Do you have this one sped up or no?
Oh, I can speed it up a little bit.
You don't have to if you don't. I just didn't know. It just goes a little.
Well, they go over a lot really quick too, so I might just keep it at the speed.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. So it's a human problem. Let's find out how.
The primary drivers of homelessness are drug addiction and mental illness.
False. We just went over this.
Yep.
That's not true. This is misinformation. I mean, drug addiction and mental illness can contribute to homelessness. And even if they did contribute to homelessness, it's still a housing problem. They still don't have homes, no matter what the cause is. And like what? So are they implying that drug addicts and people with mental illness don't deserve housing?
Let's find out.
According to data from UCLA's California Policy Lab, approximately 3/4 of people living in cars, tents, and on the streets suffer from serious mental illness, drug addiction, or both.
I wonder why. I wonder why not having a roof over your head and like being able to keep all your stuff secure and not living in a house, I wonder how that would contribute to your mental state. Like, do these people not put two and two together? Like, that maybe not having a roof over your head is really terrible for your mental health?
No, what? No, that couldn't be.
Right.
You're lying. What?
Yeah, oh, God, okay.
Second, despite these conditions, the homeless actually make rational decisions about where they want to live. Not surprisingly, they move to the most permissive environment they can find. Make your city attractive for the homeless, and they'll beat a path to your doorway. The Venice Boulevard underpass on the border of Los Angeles and Culver City brings home this point. It's one of thousands of concrete structures in Los Angeles County, but there's a curious detail. The Los Angeles side is full of tents, and the Culver City side is empty. Why?
Yeah, because of course you're going to go where you're going to get treated better, especially if you're vulnerable, especially if you're homeless because you're vulnerable.
Yes.
Like, when you're that vulnerable, you need to live somewhere that's going to protect you and not criminalize you for existing. But, you know.
Because the two cities have different public policies. Los Angeles has effectively decriminalized public camping and drug consumption, while Culver
Good.
City enforces the law.
Wait, but it is okay. But if it's decriminalized, then that
That is
means
the law.
that is the law now. Yeah, exactly. But no, there's only one correct form of the law in this country.
Oh,
That's why we don't have states or cities. We just all have the same laws everywhere in the US, right?
yeah.
This pattern that the homeless go where the policy environment is the most permissive can be seen up and down the West Coast. In San Francisco County, it's estimated that 30% of the homeless migrated there after becoming homeless somewhere else. In the city
Oh,
of
yeah.
Seattle, that number is 51%. The San Francisco Chronicle estimates that hundreds of homeless individuals move to the Bay Area each year because of the perception that it is a sanctuary for people who are unwilling to participate in programs designed to get them off and keep them off.
Actually, I'm pretty sure they go to these places because they have more and better programs for them. But
Yeah, and
like they're not just refusing to do anything.
yeah, and all yeah.
A life in the streets. At first glance, this would seem to make no sense. Why would an
Maybe if you're an
individual with no
idiot.
shelter or stable source of income move to one of the most expensive cities in the country? But in the world of the homeless, it makes perfect sense. That's because they operate under a different set of incentives than the average citizen.
Are you are they really trying to dehumanize the homeless right now? I mean,
Yep.
it's PragerU. What am I supposed to expect? But oh my god, it's kind of disgusting.
It's completely trashy what they do.
Right. Like, oh, these aren't average people. These aren't normal average people. These people are different than you and me. Like, they are others. They are beneath us. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that's
basically what this is implying here.
and we know what happened or what does happen when things like that are said.
Yeah.
Or history.
Oh, yeah. No, people are oppressed and sometimes worse.
Mhm.
In a research survey of homeless migrants in Seattle, 15% said they came to access homeless services, 10% came for legal marijuana, and 16% were transients who were traveling or visiting when they decided to set up camp. But this
Okay.
dramatically understates the biggest draw of all: the de facto legalization of street camping, drug consumption, and property crime.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Property crime?
Property crime? Who the hell is legalizing property crime? And it's not a, if it's, I don't know what he's talking about.
I think I heard something, I don't know for sure, about LA like not being as strict on property crime. We'd have to look into that because that could easily be propaganda that I saw.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna look it up right now because what
Okay.
the hell?
But I think it's more so that because they know that these people are in, not that it makes it okay to steal other people's property, obviously, but locking up these people who get put in these predicaments doesn't help anything either. That's not the solution. The solution is to provide housing
Right.
and basic needs. Every
Yeah.
single American should have their basic needs met. That is not a hard concept to grasp.
Yeah, and we can afford it. We don't even need to raise taxes on anybody. We
No.
just gotta readjust our budget so we're not spending and wasting billions of dollars on military equipment that doesn't get used.
And honestly,
I know that's the common point, but I mean, it doesn't make it less true.
well, we don't even have to truly adjust the budget, but
Right.
I'll, well,
We
because
can also raise taxes on the rich. I'm fine with that too.
but we don't have to do anything. That's the whole point. Money is not real. Like we can,
Yeah, but we
the
gotta act like
government,
it's real in the government, though.
well,
We gotta play pretend.
it's only that I understand the point of it, but they can still provide for us and still require some sort of loyal, fealty, or something. But they can still provide our basic needs if they wanted to. But I know that they don't
Yeah.
want to.
Oh,
It's
by
clear
the
they don't
way,
want to.
I couldn't find anything about legalization of property crime. I did find this that says legalizing drugs would free vast sums of money for prevention and treatment of drug abuse, for reducing its root causes, reduce the occurrence of AIDS and other diseases transmitted by drug abusers, lessen the risk of overdose or poisoning, and allow for better prenatal care for pregnant women with drug abuse issues. There's more. OJP.gov. And this one up here says that from following legalization of marijuana from 2012 to 2016, property crimes decreased to an average of about 2,000 per 100,000 residents.
You should Google quick LA soft on crime just to see if that, because that's probably
Maybe
buzzwords
property
that
crime.
are like not prosecuting car theft, or I think
Yeah,
that's what it was when I saw it. It was car theft that they weren't prosecuting, supposedly.
yeah. I don't know. It should not, this information should not be this hard to find if it's not
No, it
propaganda.
shouldn't.
So, yeah,
Well,
we're
yeah, but
just,
either way, they're not decriminalizing property crime. They're not legalizing
right,
property crime. They're just not being as
right. They're
harsh
just
as what I
not,
heard.
yeah, they're probably too busy with other stuff to deal with it, honestly. That's
Yeah,
what I would assume is the problem.
but yeah, they're not legalizing it. That's it.
Right.
That's straight up.
And what's wrong with legalizing street camping and drug consumption?
Oh,
Because,
nothing's wrong with those.
like,
That's
honestly, like, if we can't house the homeless, then you gotta let them live somewhere, you know?
yeah. That's just people who
And
have,
drug consumption just is a lot safer if it's legal. So,
yeah, those are just people who have moral superiority complexes.
right.
Who thinks those should be illegal?
Right. They said, I don't want this in my neighborhood. Well, then
No.
house the homeless and you won't have homeless people in your neighborhood. Honestly, they won't be homeless anymore. Problem solved. But I guess it's too simple for these people.
As former Seattle Public Safety Advisor Scott Lindsay has shown, the city is now home to a large population of homeless, prolific offenders, people who commit property crimes to feed their addictions, but are rarely held accountable for those crimes by the criminal
Oh my
justice system.
God.
So, is ever increasing homelessness our inevitable future? If our goal is to make life as attractive as possible for the homeless, the answer is yes. If our goal is to actually help the homeless, the answer is no.
So, how do we help the
Houston
homeless?
Mayor Sylvester Turner is a Democrat, but his approach to homelessness is a world apart from his counterparts in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle. It is simply not acceptable for people to live on the streets. It is not good for them, and it is not good for the city, Turner has said. Houston's policy is a perfect example of what Turner calls a tough love approach.
Oh no.
The city has built housing for the chronically homeless, formed a
Oh.
coalition of nonprofit partners, and lobbied the state government for more mental health and addiction services.
Oh, that
At the
actually
same
all
time,
sounds good.
Turner has enforced a strict ban on public camping and promoted a citywide campaign to discourage citizens from giving money to panhandlers.
So wait, giving money to panhandlers is illegal now? So can the Girl Scouts still sell cookies on the street? Or like, does that not count?
That probably doesn't count because they're selling something.
I mean, yeah, but like it's still a donation.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, like, and then I mean they're just on the street selling. What if a panhandler's selling something?
True. No, yeah, you're not wrong, but
The results are as instructive as they are stunning. Over the past 8 years, Houston has reduced its homeless population by 54%, while it has skyrocketed in West Coast cities. Different policies, different results. Where a Seattle politician opposes hosing down feces-covered sidewalks because hoses are racist,
What?
Houston fights in the courts for the right to...
Whoa.
what?
We gotta focus on this for a second. Hoses are racist?
How?
I mean, I don't know, honestly. Like,
They said
what did they come up
Seattle
with?
is refusing
Seattle.
to do that.
Yeah, they're refusing to spray off the shit covered sidewalks because hoses are racist, I guess. I feel like this is a wild misinterpretation of
Oh
something, but
yeah, 100. I would. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. I've never heard that.
I've never heard that either. That's a new one for sure.
Wow.
Houston fights in the courts for the right to clean up encampments. Where California progressives push for more drug injection sites and have
Good.
decriminalized thefts under $950.
Did
Did they?
California decriminalize thefts under $1,000? No, they just made it a misdemeanor instead of a felony.
Oh, so law enforcement probably won't bother to investigate though. So that's probably what they
Yeah,
mean. Is that their
exactly.
law enforcement won't do anything, so it's
But they
but it's
already don't
not.
do anything half the time,
Well, yeah,
anyways.
yeah.
Like theft at that low, like in most places.
Yeah, I think
Like,
usually if it's that low, then it's just kind of shit out of luck kind of
right,
situation,
exactly.
unfortunately. But
Yeah, but it's always been like that, and it's like that
yeah,
everywhere. It's not just California that's like that.
no,
Like,
that's
I
just
mean,
something
because
that they claim.
I've had stuff stolen from me before, under $1,000 or whatever, and yeah, no, the police aren't gonna do anything about that.
That's just one of their wild claims that
I
they
mean,
use to
and there's not a
justify
lot.
this.
To be fair, sometimes there's not a lot that they can really do because they don't have much
Yeah,
evidence to go off of. So, like, I don't completely blame the police for every situation like
n-
that.
no, it's
But
and they have a lot of other. I mean, sometimes
then
they
they have
have
so
other
much other
things.
stuff to worry
Yeah,
to do. You know, this is why we need to. This is what we were talking about before, like um, reallocating certain responsibilities to other groups of people,
yes.
and not just having each officer have this wide scope of responsibility.
And I know that some people do steal for the rush of it, but I
Yeah,
do feel like most people, like, I feel like most theft crime would drop if people's basic needs were met.
100%.
Like, is that would be fiscally
And you know what
helpful.
else? Like, if we legalize drugs, like, less people would have to steal to get their fix.
Yeah.
You know, like you see with alcohol. Like, just compare the numbers there. How many alcoholics are become thefts to feed? I mean, some still do, but it's not nearly the same amount as like illicit drug abusers.
Yeah. And I mean, it would still
And not like every
happen,
addict is
but
a thief or anything.
no.
That's definitely, I can vouch for that. That's definitely not true.
And I mean, it
But
would probably,
they
even
are
if it
out there.
was legal, it would still happen, but it
But
would
it would happen
be,
a lot less.
yes, and the prices would be more fixed. They wouldn't, I don't know. I guess I don't know if drug
Well, the
prices
prices
on
wouldn't
the
be
black
so
market
high because it
fluctuate,
wouldn't be
but
such an
yeah,
illicit drug. It would be
yes.
legal. It would be cheaper for, like a legal means of production would be a lot cheaper than the illicit means of production is. And plus,
Yes.
some of that price factor is also just the risk that you're taking
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Like, that's also why drugs tend to be expensive
Yeah.
because there's a lot of risk involved.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense logically, but I don't know that from.
Yeah, they're not decriminalized. It's a misdemeanor, or unless I'm misunderstanding.
No,
Because I
I think
think,
you're right. It did say it was a misdemeanor. It just said that they might not prosecute it.
right, like it might be like off the books decriminalized, but like it's always been like that anyways. So,
Yes, yeah. But it still like
I
there's a
mean,
law on it still. So it's still
yeah,
not decriminalized. There's still a legal law
Right.
written about it. So claiming that it is decriminalized is false. That is straight up misinformation, intentional misinformation.
Yeah. So stop treating. I guess it's not technically because it just says stop treating something as illegal as a criminal offense. And I mean, you could
What's
twist
criminal offense?
words for
Oh,
decriminalize,
yeah. I mean, yeah, they can always twist words, but
but like I mean, they twist it to make it they sound like it's like not even on the books as a law. You know, that's
but
what a lot of people think when they see that.
yeah, I'd say that's the more understood definition of decriminalized is that it literally,
Right.
if a cop sees you stealing under $950, they will just let you go. But that is not true.
Right.
If they
No. Yeah.
physically or visually are there when you are like physically are there when you are stealing, you will still get in trouble.
Right.
It's just once it gets reported, there's usually probably not a lot to even go off on and find
Right.
who
It's
the
more about the evidence not being there,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is a huge problem with our legal system in general. With the you
yes.
know, but that's a problem for another day.
Yeah.
Houston imposes consequences not only for theft, but for aggressive panhandling, window washing, and other street obstructions.
What if someone wants their window washed? Like, okay. I mean, excessive panhandling I can kind of understand, like,
Well, yeah.
because sometimes like it can be like a form of harassment if
Oh, yeah.
like the person's not leaving you alone. But and street obstructions, I
Don't
mean,
people use
okay.
that as a form of protest though? Sometimes.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's true.
As this Texas city has demonstrated, local leaders in cities of any size can
So wait, are they just going to ignore the fact that they also provided housing for all the homeless and like added more mental health programs and they're just going to like skim right over that and just pretend
Oh,
that that
yeah.
didn't happen when they
Of
like briefly
course.
mentioned it for half of a second. It's just like this is them and this is the point.
meaningfully reduce homelessness through a strategy that mixes compassion with common sense enforcement. If cities stop allowing public encampments and open drug consumption and start prosecuting property crimes, they will have much more success redirecting the homeless away from a life of self destruction.
So where do the homeless go then? If not in a house? Where are they
Uh,
supposed to go, dude? Do they just evaporate into thin air? Like,
and I wonder proportionally if Houston's homeless population was smaller than California's too, because that would make a
yeah.
difference. Because it'd be
Oh,
easier for
yeah,
them to house all those homeless people comparatively.
exactly. Yeah, that's true.
That's just a question that I had. And then I think there's one other. Oh, and then property crime. I wonder if you look at the statistics, if Houston had less property crime in general, so that's easier for them to prosecute it
Right.
comparatively to California, because
And
the
they have less people
population.
than California in
Yes.
general, so it is easier to prosecute those kinds of crimes.
And I bet if you look at the size of their departments who do the prosecuting, that's an important factor to consider too, because if they're the same
Mhm.
size, then how can you expect California's to prosecute more crimes if they're the same size? I don't know the sizes of
Yeah,
Houston or like LA. I don't know off the top of my head the population sizes of those
right.
cities,
But
but
LA is bigger than Houston. I know that for sure.
yeah, so that does matter. I know they don't talk about it that, but
Yeah,
it does matter.
absolutely. Oh, look, anything helps. Path of self destruction. Lovely.
Directing the homeless away from a life of self destruction and toward a life of hope through mental health treatment, drug rehab, and job training. That's what we all want, isn't it? So why don't we do it? I'm Christopher Rufo, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Prager
Yeah,
University.
he he intentionally didn't mention housing. He
Right.
only
He
mentioned
did mention it. That's the thing, though. He brought it
in
up
the
for like half
beginning.
a second in the beginning,
Yeah,
and then he just ignored that point completely.
at the end.
Yeah. Like if he doesn't want to house the homeless, then where does he want the homeless to go? The question's still not answered. Will it ever be answered? Probably not. He probably doesn't care. He probably, would be fine sending them all into the ocean for all he cares. Like
Yeah,
where do they go if they don't go in houses? Like this, just the
he
logic
probably
doesn't make any
thinks
sense.
they just like evaporate or something, like they
Right.
just evaporate out of thin air, and then when
Yeah.
you want them back, they'll come back and be nice to you. It's almost
Yeah.
like he just wants them to be how he wants them to be. It doesn't matter who they are as individuals. I just can't put how we're supposed to put ourselves in each other's shoes so we understand each other. I can't do that with them because
Yeah.
I don't get it. I can't look at someone and think they deserve less because of their situation. That's just so.
Right. But yeah, so this is an article I have really quick here. HG.org, legal resources. Are there any special laws regarding homeless people? The gap between the richest and poorest people in the U.S. is bigger than in any other country in the world. As a result, homelessness has become a serious and widespread problem in America. But how has society come to deal with the issue? Are there any special laws regarding homeless people? So, anti-homelessness legislation. There's two branches of law when it comes to homelessness in America: laws designed to help the homeless get aid, shelter, and food to improve their quality of life, and laws designed to criminalize homelessness and begging in order to force the homeless into shelter. Unfortunately, according to the National Coalition for Homelessness, the trend over recent years has favored criminalizing homelessness. Proponents approach of the criminalized homelessness approach believe punishment will deter people from choosing to be homeless. This view, of course, assumes that homelessness is always a choice. So they outlaw activities like sleeping, eating, sitting, and begging in public spaces. They selectively enforce neutral laws like open container laws and anti-loitering provisions against people who appear to be homeless. They face not only jail time, but also fines and other penalties. That leaves the homeless person with an arrest record, making the possibility of future employment even more difficult. Another approach to criminalizing homelessness has been to attack those who seek to help the homeless. Aid workers dispensing food to homeless people have been subject to fine or arrest in some cities. Other cities have outlawed giving money to panhandlers. Violators can be ticketed too. This has led to changes in court with mixed results. Homelessness is not a recognized protected class, which it should be.
Yeah.
The homeless are not considered a protected class against discrimination. Legislation that specifically targets the homeless can be enforced and upheld, so long as it does not deny the homeless of other constitutional rights, and the law is applied uniformly without bias towards one of the classes that are protected, such as racial, ethnic, or religious minorities. Various communities have taken ridiculous steps to discourage or criminalize homelessness, including changing sprinkler schedules to prevent sleeping in public parks, removing benches, creating permits that require the payment of a fee in order to panhandle, creating designated panhandling areas. None of these laws or activities specifically target a group other than homeless people. They often remain enforceable. What can you do? You can contribute to orgs that support helping the homeless. You can become involved in political orgs that seek to challenge laws affecting the homeless. If you're homeless or someone you know is, you can take legal action to protect yourself or that person from the legal consequences of being homeless. You can find an attorney in the area on this website. And yeah, that was the article I had about the different laws that affect the homeless. So I have one more video here.
Do we have jail support for our convicts getting arrested? We the people have a voice about this 4180. About this 4180.
protesters causing chaos after barging into a Los Angeles City Council meeting and threatening lawmakers. They were angry over a measure that would ban homeless encampments near schools and daycares. Police ended up arresting 2 of the activists. The opponents say the bill would further isolate the homeless community, and ultimately, the City Council, though, passed the measure. Judge, I want to come to you on this first. We all agree that violence has no place in any of this, that you need to disrupt peacefully. But what do you think of the measure itself? Because this is something that I'm sure is going to be popping up in cities all across the country that are dealing with homeless problem.
Well, if they ban homeless encampments near schools and near daycare centers, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, I think we've got to protect children in school. We've got to protect children in daycare centers. The problem with these homeless encampments, a lot of these people are drug users. They've got mental health conditions. They've got all kinds of problems where our kids are in danger. These people who are objecting to the displacement, as they call it, the displacement of the homeless, and saying that that's unfair and illegal, are totally wrong. They don't have a right to pitch a tent in a public place. And I think Tennessee has actually passed a law that says if you pitch a tent on public land, it's a felony for which you get 6 years in prison. They're not.
Oh my God. Felony is 6 years in prison for pitching a tent. That's ridiculous. That's craziness.
And then you'll probably see Tennessee boasting about how they fixed homelessness by making it a felony. No, the people left because
they're just all
that's
in
a
prison
threat
now.
to their life. Or they left because that's a threat to their life.
Right, that's true too, yeah.
Like, no one's going to stay. If they can get out, they will get out. But
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, they're probably in prison. And that's... And people think that's okay? Like,
right.
They would celebrate that? That's...
And this whole thing is also, not only is it morally just abhorrent, but it's financially way more expensive than just housing a homeless person.
Yeah.
Like, that's really the part that gets me. They're like, there's not even an excuse.
They're not looking to put them in prison for 6 years. They're looking to take them to the next level, which is to get the mental health treatment that they need.
What about that, Dana? And what about the role that affordable housing could play in dealing with this?
Well, it's very frustrating. The number one issue in Los Angeles is the homeless problem. Right. Okay, so that is happening, and it's going to be the number one issue in many cities. You can see it happening in this one here. It affects everybody's quality of life, and it affects your compassion, because you don't like to see people living on the street like that. And I don't understand this. They're happy with no gun zones, but what about no homeless zones around a school? Like, I think that...
Okay. Like I can understand the concern, but at the same time, it's like, not every homeless person is just gonna be out there attacking children. Like, they're probably just trying to get by and survive. Like, they're not thinking about hurting anybody. Like, sure, maybe there are some people who have mental health problems, or, like, if they're doing too much, like, if they have a drug problem, then, that can affect their mental health too. But, like, if you don't want homeless people near schools, you need to get them housing. Like, because where are they going to go? You need to answer the question, where are these people going to go? If you want to kick them out of one place, you need to answer the question, where do we want to place them then? Like, where are they going to live? And obviously the best answer would be in a house, as we keep discussing here, but these people don't seem to like that very much for some reason. They just like she even said, as she looks at homeless people, her compassion goes down, which that's kind of a self-report.
Yeah, like, I get empathy fatigue. I understand that, and we'll talk about that. But, like, your solution is making no homeless zones. But again, like you said, then where do they go? What's your solution? Because making no homeless zones is not a solution. That is not a solution to homelessness. Why do they think it is? That's my question.
Right. Like, why do they think you can just, like, evaporate people like that?
Yeah.
Like, just get rid of people and they'll just go away and you'll magically never see them again. Like, no, they still have to go somewhere. They're still people trying to live their lives the best way they can.
That should be something, well, and the city council agree, they passed it. The other thing that's happening in Los Angeles is going to be on the ballot in November. They want to make hotels report by 2 p.m. what rooms are still available. And you have to do this. This would be mandated. And then they will put homeless people in those hotel rooms for that night. And you would have no say about it if you're the hotel owner. And that is something that they want people to vote on, not the people.
Yeah, they already do that here where I live. They were doing that during COVID. During COVID, they did, yeah.
Oh,
Like at the hotel that my boyfriend worked at, they did that.
they were mandated to.
They were
How
like
did they?
housing. Yeah, it was just like a place to house the homeless. It wasn't. But then they switched back to being a hotel, and then I think someone bought them out after COVID ended. I
Oh,
mean, it
it
didn't
was.
end, but when
You
we
mean it was
first COVID,
specifically made into a homeless shelter?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
like during COVID, yeah, like when COVID was really bad.
Because I wonder how they institute this. I don't know if that policy passed, but if like there's a hotel, a vacant hotel room after 2 a.m., I wonder how they go find a homeless person to put in it. Like unless the homeless people know
Well,
and so they
they
camp
show
outside
up
the
to the
hotel
hotels
or
either way.
oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, people will come by and try to stay there. Like even hotels that aren't housing homeless people, like they'll still
Oh,
try to sleep there sometimes. And I mean, I get it, but like as you know, if your business isn't allowing that, then you gotta take care of that.
yeah.
Unfortunately, you can't let them stay if your boss tells you not to.
And I don't really know why they if there's a vacant room that doesn't have guests coming in until the
Right.
next day, I don't see like you're not going to make money off of it either way.
Right. So
So
like
why not just let a homeless person use it for the night? And then
yeah, or like
obviously
if
you
you have a
just
room, maybe it's got like a stain on the carpet that needs to be deep cleaned, so you don't want to sell that room. Like you could still let a homeless person stay in there for free.
and I
You
mean
know.
maybe their concern is that the homeless person won't leave, but I mean I
I
understand
mean,
that
if they don't leave
concern,
when they're
but
instructed to leave, then like you can always call the police. I mean,
yeah, I
that
mean
does
that's
happen.
I mean, people who paid sometimes would refuse to leave too. So it's not
Oh
like
yeah,
only homeless, but like we're not gonna
yeah.
make
It's not
this.
only homeless people. Like
No,
yeah,
yeah,
there's people
exactly.
or like people who try to get a room and there's no rooms available, and then they refuse to leave,
Yes.
and then they say, "Oh, well, there's no cops in this city," and you say, "Oh, you want to bet?"
So us making it out to be this fear that oh the homeless people won't leave if we give them the room for the day they'll want to stay forever like that's an us versus them mentality and we cannot
Right,
do that because they are human just like any other human who comes in there and may not want to leave either
right,
anybody
and
can
it's
do
not
that
just
homeless
homeless people
people
who do
are
that.
not more likely per se to do that because they are
Right,
homeless that is tarot you're basically lumping them into a group that they are less than you
right,
and that's wrong.
yeah, and yeah, just yeah, when you criminalize homelessness, like you're also giving them like a rap sheet, basically.
Yeah,
So it's even harder for them to find a job, like a legitimate way of making money. And so they have to turn to illegitimate ways of making money because they can't get a job anywhere because they don't have an address. They have a rap sheet because they don't have a place to live. They don't, like there's all these issues that pile up. And
and I'm
they're
pretty
having mental
sure
health issues most of the time.
doesn't that
Not
make it
all the
harder
time.
to get a place to live too sometimes having I don't know because don't they do background checks on you like
Oh,
when you're
and they do
renting
yeah, they do background checks when you're trying to live somewhere. Yeah,
so that makes it harder for
absolutely.
them to even get a house and or rent an apartment at the
Yeah,
first
even if they can
place
afford it.
anyways
Yeah.
yeah
Or like if like if you lose your job and you get evicted, like you have that eviction on your record now. And
yeah
like it's a lot of homeless people have been evicted. I would assume at least. I guess I don't have technical numbers on that, but in my
yeah
experience is what I've noticed. Many homeless people are people who have been evicted and can't find a new place to live because they have an
yeah
eviction,
that
for
makes sense
example.
too that's like a
Yeah.
barrier there's a lot of barriers to even getting a rental
Oh,
and
absolutely.
so
Some
that's
places
another
like to
thing we
check your
need
credit
to
score and all that.
yeah so that's another thing we need to address too if we want to if they don't want to house the homeless because that's a huge big concern of theirs then
Right.
we need to address these barriers to getting a rental
Exactly. Exactly.
a solution is not to ban homelessness because like you said where do they go
Yeah. Exactly.
on it. I hope people do come out and vote on it because the government has an obligation to try to help the people. The taxpayers are willing to help the people, but these solutions are not going to cut it.
Greg, what about that program? So everyone, like Beverly Hills Hotel, also has to register.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unspeakable truths that you can't say about this, but you should say.
Yeah.
Right? There are mentally ill people that need help. We have talked about that for years. So I'm not going to get any shame about being very. This was only about 10 cities being banned near schools. They should be banned. Period. Period. They are not safe places.
Then where do they go, bro? Oh, you can't handle this.
These are not like mentally ill people who need help, because these are people that actually choose to live there. And if you say,
Wait, so these are not
What?
mentally ill people who need help. They choose to live there. All of that is just wrong. Bro. So he doesn't want to. He was just saying, oh, yeah, we always talk about how mental illness is a problem. Oh, nope, they don't need help, though. Not these people. They chose to live there, which I would assume, some people do choose to be homeless, but most people do not.
Yeah, sometimes the people that some organizations choose to represent their values are very interesting, and
Yeah,
let's just say it's not what I would ever choose to represent any of my
yeah,
values personally, but
I would agree.
oh my God, nobody has such a. Believe me, there are people that actually believe that this is the way to live. I see them. I walk by them. I see them. I know them almost by name because I walk by them on 6th Avenue. They like places where they can aggressively panhandle. They need to be in the city to support their lifestyle, right? Because they do a lot of it's outdoor recreational drug use. That's what it is. Michael Schellenberger has been covering this forever. He ran for governor. Sadly, he lost. But the fact is, by conflating this with the mentally ill, which
It's funny how they talk about the public drug use, but they don't talk about the public alcohol use.
yeah,
It's
because
funny how they really
alcohol
like
is a
to focus
drug.
on the drug problem, because the drug problem is the degenerate problem. The alcohol problem, well, I mean, I like to drink, so we're not going to talk about the people drinking on the streets. We're just going to talk about the drug use, because that's what scares people.
Yeah, it's a fear tactic too.
It is a fear tactic.
used to do, but now I see it as a separate thing. It actually hurts the ability to do something about this. In those encampments, people are being sexually abused. There are physical fights, violent fights with actual weapons. It's truly a dystopia. And it's near Hollywood, who prefers their dystopians to be like, The Handmaid's Tale, these white patriarch fantasies, when in fact, just down the road, downtown, it is so bad. And it's expanding and expanding. It is time to ban urban camping, right? Because they're only there because they can.
Wait, did he say... let me go back. He said the white patriarch. Which I thought was interesting.
Because they're only there because they can be there. Why do liberals want homeless next to kids? I mean, that's weird. Why are they protesting?
They don't want... Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know what liberals want. I'm not a liberal. I don't claim to be. But as someone on the left, I do have to say, I don't think anybody wants homeless people like on the streets. But the way you solve this problem is not just by pretending it doesn't exist. Like, you have to acknowledge the problem and you have to house the homeless. Like, it's just...
No, the solution is there. It's there in the name.
But they don't even have a solution. That's the problem.
No. The solution to the problem is in the name.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's there. Like, that's the thing. The solution, we know the solution.
Home these people. House these
Yes.
people. Like, it literally is in the name.
But politicians love talking points. And I mean, I know these aren't politicians, but...
Well, they're like pundits still, though, and they love talking points, too.
To put homeless people half naked, shoot up drugs in front of a nursery school. Why would you want that? That's disgusting. We used to have real...
Yeah, you know what's disgusting is just like villainizing a group of people who are like extremely vulnerable and are like struggling immensely because of the wealth disparity in this country.
Yes.
Like, you don't want to demonize the people who caused the issue. You want to demonize the people who are victims of the issue.
Yeah,
that's I just can't.
Protest movements, they protest, for civil rights, for women's rights, protest against the draft. There's nothing left to protest. They're protesting for the ability of homeless people to smoke crack in front of a nursery school. That's insane. If you want to protest, fine, but eventually you have to move from the protest to producing something. And if you're stuck on the homeless, okay, they're actually protesting for the homeless to stay homeless. They're not protesting or producing anything for the homeless, like getting them off the streets. They're like, yeah, we want the homeless to stay sick and homeless and dirty and disgusting. We want that. Don't try to stop them from living a depraved, disgusting, unhealthy life next to children.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants that, but that's fine. We'll just
And
assign
why
these
did
values to people anyways.
he just, like, he used very dehumanizing words to
Oh,
describe
yeah.
a homeless person.
Right. And he's really making a big deal about the drug part where, like, a lot
Well,
of homeless people don't even use drugs. Like, it's not as common in the homeless community as these people make it out to be. Like, it does happen, don't get me wrong, but,
well, yeah.
like, it's not like literally every homeless person is a crack addict who's, like, pregnant and, like, smoking crack with a baby in their stomach or something. Like, that's what they're making this out to be.
Because they're
And, like,
trying to
stealing from
villainize them.
people and, like, siphoning gas or whatever.
Yeah, they're trying to villainize them. They're trying to
They
build an
are.
us versus them mentality. And unfortunately, it's working. I see
Yeah,
it working in America, and it's terrifying.
it is. Absolutely.
I think some dignified solution that treats people with respect on both sides.
Is there any dignity? What you
get
get
them
them off the streets? That's the one thing that's the least dignified thing to do. Yeah.
I'm talking about the solution that treats people as people and also protects
Who's saying
Yes.
I'm not-
Okay.
I'm
I don't
Such a
know.
straw man.
I don't know who that lady in the green is, but she's preaching something good at least.
Yeah, then she probably got fired the next day.
Right. Well, they probably have her on there to, you know, like for the people who have a little bit of humanity left in them that are watching the Fox
Oh.
Drive. Like, oh, there's a reasonable person. That's good.
It is not.
Yes, who's not going to treating them like people is getting them off the street and getting them treatment. How about we treat the kids like people?
I do. I have a child.
Why are you pro-homeless, Jessica?
Because they're people too. The fastest is up next.
I want to Brian kill me.
All right. Yeah.
And of course, they ganged up on her too, so she couldn't even talk.
Right. Yeah, of course. They
That's
did not
what
want
they
to talk.
do. So, this one here, National Alliance to End Homelessness, employed and experiencing homelessness, what the numbers show. Have you ever heard the idea that people experiencing homelessness don't want to work or they should just get a job? The truth is that many do. In fact, a 2021 study from the University of Chicago estimates that 53% of people living in homeless shelters and 40% of unsheltered people were employed, either full or part-time, in the year that people were observed homeless between 2011 to 2018. Despite how many people experiencing homelessness work, a job doesn't solve everything. Life-sustaining wages are a key detriment of housing security. However, most people experiencing homelessness are not earning enough to afford rent. So, low wages and underemployment, what the numbers show, the National Low Income Housing Coalition's Out of Reach report calculates that a household would need to earn an average salary of $46,967 or $23 per hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. This is much higher than the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour, or in cities with a higher minimum wage. Even if people are working full-time, they would not be able to afford housing earning minimum wage. The realities of working while homeless. A service provider in Southern California pointed to several challenges that can prevent people from attaining sufficient employment. Discrimination. People experiencing homelessness may experience systemic racism as well as discrimination if employers require a permanent address. Logistics. People experiencing homelessness may need to access public facilities to properly prepare for interviews, and their living situation may not be feasible to do so. Access to transportation can also impact when and how they can get to work. Accommodations. Since the homeless population experiences higher rates of physical and cognitive disabilities, many may need work accommodation to perform their jobs successfully. Hiring challenges. There may be educational requirements and unspoken social expectations that can impede hiring a person who is currently or has formerly experienced homelessness. People may need support and time to build skills in order to qualify for jobs they are interested in. There are also less obvious challenges. Certain benefits are at risk once someone starts earning a higher income, making the transition from homelessness potentially stressful. For example, the income limit for Social Security for a person under retirement age is $19,000, 560, or $19,560. This is much lower than the salary required to afford the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment, not accounting for the cost of food or other necessities. Losing these benefits when people are still trying to securely transition into housing only makes the process that much harder. And finding employment doesn't equate to finding housing. Even someone experiencing homelessness has a job and is able to afford rent. That doesn't mean they'll be able to easily find a place to live. Landlord discrimination against past or current homelessness, eviction history, involvement of criminal justice, and income source can all prevent people from achieving housing security. Barriers like these can keep people homeless, even if they're working and even if there are affordable units available in their area. So, while many people experiencing homelessness are employed, their income alone often isn't enough to maintain stable housing. This can result in financial insecurity, which is both a main cause and a prolonging factor of homelessness. Every person's situation is different and demands unique solutions. Providing pathways to sustainable employment can be an effective way to help people achieve housing security. It's an important goal for individuals to attain a job that interests them and also pays life-sustaining wages. But even more broadly, housing needs to be financially accessible in the first place, as the Out of Reach report shows. A paycheck should be able to support one's housing needs. By expanding affordable housing overall, people who work may finally be able to attain housing security. So I just thought that was important because I do think a lot of people do believe this sentiment that they just need to get a job, they're lazy, they need to work, but that is inaccurate.
Yeah, there's a lot of homeless people who have jobs.
Yes, and as we talked about before this article too, the barriers to even getting an apartment, and then I forgot about minimum wage. Of course, that's not gonna be enough to live or buy or like rent an apartment. So, again, what is your solution? Where do these people go? Like you said.
Yeah.
So then, I have an article here from Heading Home, I guess. It's called Housing First Model, an evidence-based approach to ending homelessness. So, Heading Home was one of the first organizations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to pioneer Housing First as a permanent supportive housing framework more than 15 years ago. Housing First is a recovery-oriented approach to ending homelessness that is not contingent on compliance. Rather, a rights-based intervention rooted in the philosophy that all people deserve housing and that adequate housing is a precondition for recovery. The model centers on quickly moving people experiencing homelessness into independent and permanent housing and providing additional support for physical and mental health, education, employment, substance abuse, and community connections. Grounded in the underlying principle that people are better able to move forward with their lives if they are first housed, the Housing First model is proven to deliver effective mental health and addiction recovery outcomes. So then they have 5 core principles. So the first one is immediate access to permanent housing with no housing readiness requirements. So that involves providing clients with assistance in finding and obtaining safe, secure, and permanent housing as quickly as possible. The key to Housing First philosophy is that individuals are not required to demonstrate that they are ready for housing. Housing is not conditional on sobriety or abstinence. Program participation is also voluntary. This approach runs in contrast to what has been the orthodoxy of treatment first approaches, whereby people experiencing homeless are placed in emergency services and must address specific personal issues, addictions, mental health, before being deemed ready for housing, having received access to healthcare or treatment. Consumer choice and self-determination. Housing First is a rights-based client-centered approach that emphasizes client choice in terms of housing and supports. Housing, clients can exercise some choice regarding the location and type of accommodation they receive. The selection may be constrained by local availability and affordability. Supports, clients have choices in terms of what services they receive and when to start using those services. Third, recovery orientation. Housing First practice is not simply focused on meeting basic client needs, but on supporting recovery. A recovery orientation focuses on individual well-being and ensures that clients have access to a range of supports that enable them to nurture and maintain social, recreational, educational, occupational, and vocational activities. For those with addiction challenges, a recovery orientation also means access to a harm reduction environment. Harm reduction aims to reduce the risks and harmful effects of substance use and addictive behaviors for the individual, the community, and society as a whole without requiring abstinence. However, as part of the spectrum of choices that underlies both housing first and harm reduction, people may desire and choose abstinence-only housing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Individualized and client-driven supports. A client-driven approach recognizes that individuals are unique and so are their needs. Once housed, some people will need minimum supports while other people will need supports for the rest of their lives. This could range from case management to assertive community treatment. Individuals are provided with a range of treatment and support services that are voluntary, individualized, culturally appropriate, and portable. Income supports and rent supplements are often an important part of providing client-driven supports. If clients do not have the necessary income to support their housing, their tenancy, health, and well-being may be at risk. Rent supplements should ensure that individuals do not pay more than 30% of their income on rent, which I think that's also just the
That's supposed to be the
norm, isn't it?
standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's supposed to be the standard just for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5, social and community integration. Part of the Housing First strategy is to help people integrate into their community, and this requires socially supportive engagement and the opportunity to participate in meaningful activities. If people are housed and become or remain socially isolated, their housing stability may be compromised. So then here, data shows that early experiences with homelessness and their contribution to adverse childhood experiences are high indicators of future trauma experiences. Homelessness often diminishes hope and self-efficacy and may be accompanied by substance abuse. Recovery from mental illness has been documented as much more challenging when homelessness is experienced prolonged and frequently, often leading to psychiatric distress and inadequate or harmful coping strategies. Housing First provides housing to safeguard against those adversities, address complex trauma, and mitigate compounding harm. And then we kind of talked about cost savings. I think they mentioned annual cost per person before entering housing was $37,434. Once permanently housed, annual cost is $25,633. Total savings of $11,801. And then medical expenses of unhoused was $30,669. Once housed, that number is reduced to $10,029.
Yes.
So that's a lot of money for people who are concerned about
and
the
that's just
cost
one
of all
person
of it.
saving that much money.
Yes.
So like adding everybody up, that's a lot of money. Just saying.
Yes, exactly. And then I have one more here from University of California, San Francisco, talking again about Housing First, because I think Housing First is a very viable solution that we should be looking into everywhere, nationwide, globally probably too. And I think that's what Finland did. I think that's what that video talked about. So Housing First is not housing only. Let me just skim this here. So the solution to homelessness is housing. Who would have thought? Now people who are homeless don't suffer from a lack of motivation to lift themselves up. They suffer from homelessness.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow, that blew my mind. Most critiques of Housing First reiterate 3 key points. Housing First is a one-size-fits-all, is one of their claims. Housing First interventions don't provide adequate treatment to clients, or as one critic put it, Housing First policy is indistinguishable from housing and nothing else. And then Housing First interventions are ineffective. The right-leaning Manhattan Institute has observed that homelessness continued to rise in California following the adoption of Housing First as a statewide strategy. So, arguments 1 and 2 are based on a conceptual misunderstanding, and argument 3 is simply inaccurate. And let's find out why. So, argument 1, which is the most mysterious, what does it mean for Housing First to be one size fits all? Critics tend to invoke the phrase without explanation, which they do all the time on anything they talk about, as if having a coherent statewide plan for solving homelessness was a priori objectionable. Italian. But who are the unhoused people who would not benefit from receiving housing? Calling Housing First one size fits all is a bit like complaining that blood transfusions are the emergency department's one size fits all response to major blood loss. The patient's overall treatment plan may vary based on the nature of the blood loss or the blood type of the patient, but everyone needs blood to live. Similarly, everyone needs a home, but beyond access to permanent housing, the needs of people experiencing homelessness vary. While some individuals may need additional support in order to achieve lasting housing security, there is also a large share of the homeless population that only needs housing assistance. This was one of the key insights from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development's Family Options Study, which evaluated various interventions for helping homeless families. Households that received a permanent housing subsidy but no other form of specialized assistance saw a sharp drop in homeless shelter utilization and cycling between unstable living situations. For many of the families who received the subsidy, housing and nothing else, or rather rental assistance and nothing else, really was exactly what they needed. But the Housing First approach is not only for those families. As the title of this point indicates, Housing First is not housing only. And for people with severe physical, behavioral, or substance use challenges that could force them back into homelessness if not addressed, we should be offering wraparound services on a Housing First basis. For people wrestling with chronic homelessness and of the aforementioned challenges, the evidence supports permanent supportive housing, an intervention that prioritizes moving unhoused people with particular high needs into permanent housing while also offering them a variety of optional services. These services may include physical rehabilitation, mental health care, treatment for substance use disorders, and even home care. The specific treatment program is voluntary and customized to meet the needs of the client, precisely the opposite of one size fits all. Housing First works. So far, I've only addressed critics' often willful mischaracterization of the theory behind Housing First, but despite what Argument 3 claims, we also have a significant body of evidence demonstrating its effectiveness in real-world conditions. This data visualization, which we don't see, but let me
click on it.
Evidence. What am I supposed to? I don't understand this. Hover over.
Those are just different studies that show that Housing First works.
Okay. Isn't it usually? Is that how scales work? Like the one that's lower is better? I thought the one that was higher.
Well, the one that's lower is heavier. It's saying that there's more evidence.
Oh, okay.
Supporting that Housing First works. And that there is no evidence that says it doesn't work.
Because isn't there a thing where they'll test your morality on like the weight of a feather or something? Isn't that a thing? And then if the feather weighs something, then you lose. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about like when they used to test if women were witches?
No.
That's what it sounded like to me.
I'll have to look into that. Because you would test your it might have been that, but I think I saw it in more of a film, like a movie or something. But I'll have to look into that sometime because it was very obviously just like a moral superiority thing. It wasn't actually real. I know that, but I just find it interesting that then they would use a scale, because obviously I feel like people who would actually believe that are people who would then think that all this evidence shows that this is like bad, you know? They don't know how to comprehend things. But I just want to see. So, but yes, this does show that there's a bunch of evidence that does support Housing First. So that is a good visual, though.
Mm-hmm.
This Housing First aligned treatment was specifically for the hardest to treat members of Santa Clara's unhoused community. 86% of those who received the treatment were successfully housed and remained housed for the vast majority of the follow-up period. Similarly, there was a sharp drop in utilization of emergency psychiatric services among the treatment group, corresponding to a rise in scheduled mental health visits. So the evidence shows that it can work for even the highest need population of people experiencing homelessness. The 86% success rate cited in the Health Services Review article, while impressive, actually understates the intervention's effectiveness. When BHHI researchers revisited Santa Clara for additional data, they found that more than 90% of participants had been housed and remained housed over the long term. So, why is California still experiencing a homelessness crisis? It's not because we don't know how to house people. Rather, it's because the scale of public investment in housing first infrastructure doesn't match up to the enormity of the problem. While the state took a step in the right direction this year when it allocated $12 billion out of its most recent budget to fighting homelessness, it will take years of work to adequately build up California's existing housing first infrastructure. Furthermore, while Housing First programs are the best way to help most people who are already homeless, they do not prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. If Housing First programs were to successfully rehouse 10,000 people over 1 year, but rising housing costs forced 20,000 people into homelessness over the same period, then the homeless population will have grown on net. That is why Housing First interventions need to be paired with policies that bring down housing costs, offer protection to struggling renters, and prevent people from falling into homelessness in the first place.
Yes.
So even Housing First isn't a one track solution, I guess, because there are so many factors and variables that go into it, and addressing why people become homeless is also an important factor. But the answer, the solution to homelessness is in the name. Because what do they not have?
Right, homes. Yeah, they need homes.
Exactly. So I don't understand how people are so against that.
I don't know. Well,
But
because, yeah, they think it's going to be more expensive to house homeless people, but it's not.
no, and the data shows that it will be so
It's cheaper.
much. Yes, it's cheaper. And it's just ethical to
Yeah.
do that. Or moral, if you will.
Yeah, especially because we can. We
Yes,
got the money.
we do. We can afford to do that. So really, there's no excuse that we aren't doing it, except for the
Right.
fact that people use them as pawns in their political games,
Yeah. True.
which is disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, they're still people.
Yeah, exactly. And this us versus them mentality has to stop, because that is going to lead to, it's already leading down a dangerous path, but it needs to
Yeah.
stop because they are human. We are all humans. It doesn't matter, because you could end up homeless for any reason.
Yeah.
Anyone can end up homeless. No one is above becoming homeless.
Exactly.
So it's just odd that people think that they're better than homeless people. It's just, I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's something that we definitely need to work on as a society. Not only housing them, but then finding solutions to
Right.
prevent people from becoming homeless, and then
And
not treating them any differently.
right. And letting, having programs for them to participate in if they choose to.
Yes, and that's
Like
a huge
the harm
tenet.
reduction and the abstinence and, whatever path they want to choose.
Yeah, and that's a huge tenet of the Housing First
Right.
program type thing. So, and I mean, I'm pretty sure it worked in Finland. I think it was
Yeah.
Finland. So it
Yeah.
works. And there's a bunch of data that shows it works. So really we have no excuse not to implement it
Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly.
Except, I don't even know what I
Yeah,
would call it.
except for just a prejudice towards homeless people, I guess.
Yeah, and
And
just,
like having a stereotype in your head.
yeah, so that, what's that,
'Cause
like, what's the opposite of moral? Immoral? Is that,
immoral. Yeah.
oh, I wanted it to be a better word. Just calling them immoral, they're not gonna care, but yeah, you're immoral if you don't think we should be doing this stuff.
Yeah.
But
True.
did you have anything else?
No. I
No.
mean, we went through enough. We
Yeah,
only
and
went for an hour 45.
there's still probably a lot more, but I think we covered
We
quite a bit
covered a
of
lot.
important information too, though. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you guys can leave a comment below letting us know what you want us to talk about in future episodes.
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then Twitch sometimes too.
Yes, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you know when we do. But otherwise, we will see everyone next time.